just as the panel make their way up, so Jiggle represents Marriott, focused on development in Africa, and Charles does the similar job, but for Wyndham. Bobby's based in Zanzibar and involved in a number of developments. So the questioning around him will be focused more on the Zanzibar market. So our topic today is going to be focused on high-end beach resorts from an East African context. I think just to put it, just to give it a little bit of flavor in terms of that, I mean, we're going to look at obviously the coastline of Kenya and also Tanzania on the mainland, and just understand whether we think there's potential and how the landscape has been changing, as well as looking at, obviously from a Zanzibar perspective, looking more specifically at some of the positive changes there in terms of legislation, facilitating development, and how that landscape has changed and what the potential will be moving forward. So I think in terms of, Ube touched on earlier on in the previous session that there's different markets and there's different reasons people come to East Africa. One is obviously the bush, and then a natural progression is to try and link that with the beach circuit, whether that be on the mainland or whether that be in Zanzibar. And the other is just coming directly from a beach perspective, whether it be all-inclusive package resorts or just international packages to the mainland as well as to Zanzibar. And we've seen that in Zanzibar. Zanzibar is managing to attract both of these. And that landscape, we can talk a little bit about that just now, how that's changed. But I think if we start initially to focus or have a look at from an East African perspective on the mainland, I mean, do we think there's, and maybe I can start with Marriott, seeing they've got more hotels than Wyndham. Well, I'm actually not too sure. They've got a bit of a competition going here. So I think Wyndham might have more now, but I'm not sure. But so in terms of East Africa, if we look, where do we think the opportunities lie? And are there opportunities for more high-end beach resorts on, the East African coast, more Mombasa, Diani Beach, other destinations? And how would those fit in with the rest of the context in terms of other, especially from your company's perspective, the strategies linking with other destinations? So Jiggle, if you can take that one.
Thanks, Wayne, and hi, everyone. I think the previous panelists really touched upon a lot of the topics about, the overall circuit being in place in various countries within Africa. I think one of the biggest challenges is from a traveler's perspective, due to the varying visa requirements and other travel restrictions, it becomes very difficult, let's say, for a traveler looking to experience the overall circuit within, let's say, East Africa, for this example. Whoever wants to go and stay a couple of nights or spend a week by the beach in Zanzibar or somewhere in Seychelles, and then watch the Big Five, experience the Big Five in Masai Mara, Serengeti, and the various other destinations it has to offer, and also partake in some gorilla trekking in Rwanda or maybe even Uganda. I think just to plan that overall itinerary physically might just pose a lot of challenges. I think the focus now is obviously to work on circuits within a country itself. So considering Kenya has so much to offer, this is something that we've been looking to expand into. We obviously have a property in Masai Mara. We are expanding quite significantly there. We're also currently exploring several opportunities by the coast in Diani Beach. Diani Beach currently has a lot of unbranded properties per se, which have been doing quite well, but the brands are obviously missing. There are quite a few investors who are looking in expanding within that destination and obviously getting some of the brands such as Marriott in purely from a distribution perspective to help induce more demand within the destination. We obviously see a lot of growth in Zanzibar as well. It's interesting that you mentioned Zanzibar because Zanzibar generally is known to have a lot of boutique resorts which are uniquely designed to embed a lot of the local culture within their design ethos and their overall brand positioning. But the next level of growth in Zanzibar is primarily going to be around the hard brands, either within the premium or the luxury category. And that's exactly what we're seeing. And of course, for lodges, I think the previous panelists really touched upon possibly the variety of destinations and offering that most of these countries have with regards to lodges. And we're, as always, looking for the right opportunity with the right partner to expand our brand presence within that.
Yeah, I mean, just to touch on that, I mean, where do we think the opportunities lie? I mean, if we're talking high-end resorts, do we think there's potential in Mombasa, Diani Beach? And if so, what kind of products are you guys looking at there? And what kind of models and what would differentiate your products from the other products that are there? And I'll also extend that to Charles as well.
Yeah, I think currently, you know, we would probably want to enter a destination like Diani Beach with one of our brands under the premium or the luxury category. So that's something that we would look at, potentially more on the premium segment though at the moment. I just feel that the opportunity lies within the all-inclusive segment. I think the unbranded hotels are doing it very well. They're generally family run and they've had a lot of success in promoting the destination and obviously promoting their resorts and inducing a lot of demand. So I think, you know, we don't want to really reinvent the wheel at the moment. I think it's working well. It's something that we'll be exploring as well. But obviously with, you know, the variety of distribution channels and the strength of our distribution channels, we would probably bring a lot more direct bookings and probably lower the dependency on traditional demand generators to the respective properties that come up there with us.
Sure.
Thanks, Wayne. And couldn't agree more. From Wyndham perspective, obviously East Africa is blessed with a natural advantage with both city, coastal, and safari circuit. We're in a privileged position to be exploring properties and projects in both urban, coastal, and the safari circuit. So, you know, obviously with stronger airlifts, you know, Zanzibar seeing a 50% increase in international flights post-COVID. We're seeing definitely a rise in sort of these multi-itinerary itineraries, you know, basically make it quite viable. From a Wyndham development point of view, we obviously have a lot of brands that can fit in quite easily within that urban, coastal, and safari circuit. You know, a brand like Trip by Wyndham or Ramada and Core, and then for our safari projects, obviously more of a bespoke approach within the luxury segment. We have a brand called Registry Collection, and within that upper mid-scale trademark collection. So there's definitely with the rise in demand, more experiential travel. You know, we're definitely seeing an interest in sort of more packaged journeys that can connect these circuits, basically. Yeah.
So do you think the Kenyan coastline is more suited towards linking with the bush, or I mean, we're seeing some other, you know, large kind of more packaged tourist type operators coming in and start offering more direct 10-day, 12-day kind of markets like you would look at in Mauritius and Seychelles, particularly, you know, single destination? Or are you guys not really seeing that, or you think it's more the interconnectivity and linking? I mean, would products in Diani Beach connect well with more high-end exclusive resorts in Mara and Serengeti, or is it, you know, I mean, we can also bring in the Zanzibar discussion because they've done this, and so we can talk about it after this question.
No, it's a very good question, Wayne. I mean, we're definitely seeing the strong appeal for the Kenyan coast. We're getting more and more inquiries, but for us, you know, high-end, you know, not necessarily luxury in the traditional sense. We're looking to target more mid-scale resorts, whether it be traditional management, franchise, or even the condo and branded residences space. And a brand like Ramada does this fitting quite well. Obviously we know Diani, Kilifi, Watamu. These are markets that are underrepresented by international brands. For us, we tend to lean more towards new build due to the age of the properties and possibly not aligning with international brand standards. But that also being said, Wyndham's has proven success with repositioning properties worldwide and where it makes sense for the asset. Yeah.
Jules, I don't know if you want to add to that before I move on to Zanzibar.
Yeah, look, I echo exactly what Charles has mentioned, and like I mentioned earlier, we have a presence in Nairobi. We do have a presence now in the Mara. We're obviously expanding to other destinations in terms of national parks here, and I think what we're really missing within our portfolio is a beach resort, in Kenya. So I think that's the next move for us. Obviously, it totally depends on the partner that we look to do business with, and at the moment we're exploring some very exciting opportunities there. And I have had the privilege of exploring some of the existing resorts there, and I think with a small, not too extensive property improvement plan, it would fit really well within some of our conversion-friendly brands, such as the Autograph Collection, Tribute Portfolio, or the Delta. But honestly, these are discussions that we're having quite aggressively at the moment. So we hopefully have some good news for everyone in the coming year.
Just moving towards over to Zanzibar. So Zanzibar is a bit different in the sense that in Zanzibar, I think also we've been working there in the last 5 to 7 years quite heavily. A lot with Bobby, and we've seen the landscape changing in the sense that a lot of the operators that were in Serengeti and the Mara were looking at small beach resorts. Some have been successful, some have not been successful at that. Some of them have actually kind of got out of that and looked at alternatives. And then we've seen the resurgence of the more tour operator type product in terms of people. Bigger, larger resorts, Rui, Tui Blue, etc. In terms of with the airlift and regulatory changes, things have improved significantly. So Zanzibar now, if you look worldwide from a tour operator perspective, is kind of one of the flavors of the month. So I don't know if you want to just touch on that and how you see things have changed over the last 5 to 7 years, especially from a market perspective, and then after that we can touch on things that might have facilitated that and made things easier from a regulatory changes that have facilitated development.
Thank you, Wayne, and hello everybody. Zanzibar in the last 5-7 years, there's been an exponential growth in Zanzibar generally. When I first rocked up there 30 years ago, there was maybe 5 government beach guest houses on the island and a few random things. Nemba was just starting up and what have you. So there was growth, and as Jugal said, a lot of it was kind of boutique developments. A lot of the best sites were on the main beaches, were taken by sort of more risk-tolerant private investors, the sort of missionaries, mercenaries, and misfits who were prepared to take a punt on this tropical island that nobody was going to at the time. Because Zanzibar was always an add-on to the safari circuit. It was sort of something that people were like, well, maybe we do a few days at the end. And you could see that in the guest profile. But what's happened really in the last 5-7 years is there's been a fundamental shift. Zanzibar has gone from fringe to mainstream, as we recognize. There's been a number of reasons for this, but primarily the biggest accelerator that happened to us was actually COVID. Zanzibar remained open during COVID and ended up being pretty much one of the only destinations on the entire planet. And as a result, its destination profile just rose significantly. Everybody wanted to go there. The airlines that previously just saw Nairobi as East Africa they needed somewhere to land. So the airline started kind of putting in scheduled routes into Zanzibar, which led to a new terminal being built, which led to more marketing of Zanzibar in order to fill the seats on the aeroplanes. And so everything's kind of shifted. And whereas in the 90s, when I was in safaris, we took people to Zanzibar for a few days at the end, one of the big changes that we've seen, particularly in the last few years, is we've seen a shift towards people coming to Zanzibar for 2 weeks, and then if you're at Zanzibar Airport on a morning at 7 o'clock, you will see 3 or 4 planes, each carrying 50 people, flying up to the Serengeti for the day. So people are now going to Zanzibar and visiting the Serengeti for a day or two, like they would go to California and go to Disneyland for a day. And I don't mean that in a negative way necessarily, but just that it is sort of one of those once-in-a-lifetime experiences that people suddenly feel is accessible. So what Zanzibar has done really, I think, in this regard, it's got a wonderful destination profile. Everybody sort of had heard of Zanzibar, even if they didn't know where it was. They didn't even know if it existed, but they sort of knew of it. So it's just sort of been a confluence of all of these random things coming together to sort of raise its profile in such a way that now, as you say, it is very much kind of flavor of the month for a lot of tour operators, for destination brands, for airlines, and for everybody. And, we see Zanzibar increasingly, given the change in airlift, we see Zanzibar slowly replacing Nairobi as the hub for East Africa for a lot of the tourism business as well. Because with the airport now being managed by Dinata and what have you, Emirates are getting more involved in the airport. Fly Dubai's 4th most popular route throughout its network is actually Dubai Zanzibar. So there is fundamental shifts, as we're recognizing.
Yeah, if we just touch base, and also just bring in the others now, your view, and also the brand's view, there are no major brands there yet. We signed a franchise in Fumba town with Hilton last year. But other than that, in terms of large beach resorts, there are the Amelias, etc. There's probably Hyatt, but other than that, there's not much of the large international brands. Let's explore why that is. Is it the development models? Is it this resurgence maybe of the owner-operator type, tour operator brands, TUI, RUI, even others coming in now like Catalonia and others. And then how do we see this all fitting, and from the brand's perspective, how you see this you competing and the differentiation, and what can you offer that possibly the others can't offer?
Shall I start? Yeah, that's it. The Melia, it was initially a Kempinski, and that was the first brand, and that was sort of 2009, it sort of appeared, and then it shifted to Melia. And on the back of that, Melia have expanded from their Spanish base all across Tanzania, and they probably sort of have the biggest circuit of hotels in Tanzania now. And then, Catalonia, TUI Blue, Barcelona building. There's about sort of 2,500 keys in the pipeline at the moment, but they're not big international brands. A lot of them are coming in now because there's new planes. TUI are bringing in charters from Madrid. So a lot of the Spanish operators are moving in to take advantage of that. But I think part of the reason and part of the challenges that the brands face, the big international brands when it comes to Zanzibar, is that they're a little bit late to the party, and that a lot of the best sites have gone. Whereas, if you show an interest in the Serengeti, it's very big. There's still a concession that can be found that can work for you. But with Zanzibar, it's finite. All of the early sort of legacy founder properties took the best beach sites, and they were generally on beaches that had fishing villages on them because that's where the boats could actually come up. So there's narrow strips of land that lent itself very well to boutique-run lodges with community outreach that then took on the very rustic, localized, stylized kind of appearance that Jugala referred to earlier on as well. So it's actually quite difficult now for the big brands to get into market because they need to find a site that works, whereas there are sites on the Kenyan coast. And I should say also as well that sort of the Tanzanian coastal product consists of more of Zanzibar. We do have Pemba Island, which is part of the Zanzibar archipelago, and we have Mafia down in the south, which is part of Tanzania, but which now has Jumeirah's first property in Africa operating on it. So there is sort of some interest in the other islands, but obviously Zanzibar is the big name, because even if you want to visit the other islands, you have to come into Zanzibar, and people lose time traveling to the other islands. So the challenges are for them to come in, to find a good site, and then to create a meaningful product that doesn't clash in a big way with everything that Zanzibar has been developing for the next 25 years. And that requires differentiation, it requires a very different outlook, rooms that pay sort of homage to everything outside rather than the decor within and things. And you know, I'm sure that the other panelists will be able to talk on this some more, but differentiation is going to be the key, I think.
But I mean, you can also touch, Jiggle, on, I mean, one of the things that you can bring is obviously through your loyalty programs in terms of that is also expand the destination. So maybe you can, but.
Yeah, look, I echo what Bobby just mentioned, and I agree. For us, it's a matter of finding the right site, but also finding the right partner. As you probably know, we generally work on two different models. One of them is under a management agreement or under a franchise agreement. Our models are very different to some of the other tour operator-led models and the way they go about, you know, acquiring these sites. Having said that, we do have a very healthy pipeline in Zanzibar. We've got, between open and signed properties, we've got around 5 in total, which is actually, you know, not too bad. However, I just feel that the room for growth in that destination for us at the moment is, one, under the luxury space, you know, under one of our hard brands. So I'd love to put up a Ritz-Carlton in Zanzibar, or potentially even a JW, or even a luxury collection per se, in a private island, you know, and very small key counts, you know, something very luxurious that would cater to a certain traveler. But also, on the other hand, I just feel that with considering the rest of the competition that's there and the strength of our distribution channels, I just feel that there is a lot of room to also target the premium all-inclusive segment. So having a hard brand Marriott, you know, pure all-inclusive hotel, which I strongly believe would do really well, or potentially if, you know, the site is probably not the best, then we can look at something in the select service segment. Another opportunity that we've been currently exploring in a place like Zanzibar is under the apartments, you know, because we realize that a lot of the travelers that are coming there are also long stay travelers who might not necessarily want to do a 4 or 5 day holiday by the beach, but who probably want to travel the destination for a bit and also have, you know, let's say book an apartment for about 7 or 8 nights, you know, and come with a larger family as well. So there is that level of demand that's been untapped, and that's something that we're willing to explore as well. And you know, it's good that you mentioned the lodges too, because, you know, since we've been expanding within the lodge segment, you know, with some of our luxury brands, I think that our partners do realize that in order for them to complete the circuit with these brands, they would probably need a beach, a resort by a beach destination as well. So at least from the time that the traveler lands within Tanzania, you know, they would be with one ownership group, basically, similar to what some of our competitors have been doing quite successfully, you know, in the country.
Shauna, if you want to add to that at all?
Thanks, Wayne. No, I think it's fairly well covered by Bobby and Jugal. I think I can just echo that. We've obviously seen a big pipeline growth as well in Zanzibar. I think 20% increase in the pipeline, but also, you know, maybe a comment on, maybe a different take on the differentiation point that you made. You know, we think the success lies with combining global brand standards with good storytelling. So not only just in the design and the material, but also in the F&B offering. You know, obviously local authentic flavors and regionality that's introduced into international brands. Some of our brands like Trip by Wyndham and Ramada and Core all facilitate sort of that global, so that local flavor. and guests are, our research are showing, guests are seeking more of these experiences. They're seeking authenticity. They're looking for a local experience, and obviously even aligning with operators that are valuing sustainability, so actionable sustainability in their properties. Just to add to that.
Bobby, if we touch on, in terms of obviously this rise in development, I mean, the question is, has there been some regulatory changes, and have there been things that have been facilitating ease of development in Zanzibar? I mean, is this changing the landscape? I know historically one of the things that some parties tried previously was the sale of units, and the difficulty was that there was no land ownership, and so it was very difficult to do high-end sales of villas, which would also help in terms of from a development landscape. But maybe you can just touch on the regulatory and see if it touches on that element or not.
Sure, thank you. I mean, yeah, on the back of this COVID surge that we experienced, at the same time we also had a change in administration in Zanzibar, and we have a very business-friendly government administration in place at the moment, who have been taking quite extraordinary steps to try and develop the tourism product, but also to open up some of the different ownership models. So earlier on there was talk of apartments, and Antara coming in now with branded residences, and it's the first big sort of branded residences development that's happened in Zanzibar. And this has all been the work of the current administration. They have done considerable work on the titles, unit titles. So now it's possible for foreigners to own property on Zanzibar for 99 years, whether within a branded compound or within any approved development. There's a lot of money has gone into infrastructure recently. It's an absolute nightmare at the moment, but in the long term, we look forward to good road structures. The Silicon Zanzibar initiative that's gone on is trying to invite technological groups from around the world to come and set up in Zanzibar and improve it as and position it as a technological hub. And then the other thing, sorry, just for the unit titles as well, is that there was the proverbial golden visa rule recently introduced, and so now you can, if you spend more than $100,000 on a unit, you can get residency in Zanzibar. It doesn't necessarily mean you can work, but you can get residency. And so this lends itself to what we were talking earlier on about the longer stay segment that's coming in, the proverbial digital nomads that are basing themselves there. And then this is having a significant trickle-down effect across the whole island. I mean, sort of every weekend I'm in different parts of the island, and there's new restaurants, there's new hotels opening, everything's changing at such a significant pace, but it's primarily because of the regulatory support that the government have given to make it happen.
Well, that's great. I mean, let's touch on that in terms of the brands. I mean, this could be a key differentiator for the brands. Obviously, brands have very strong residence models, and be able to sell that at a premium, and that could be a key element that they could offer and help get into the market, because I mean historically it's probably more difficult in the sense that, as we're saying, a lot of people that are acquiring the sites now are actually owning and operating, doing that all-inclusive model for themselves, but the brands can definitely add in terms of residents. So you guys seeing opportunities from the branded residence side, linking it with existing resorts? I mean, that also makes development a lot easier, because if you can sell, then you can actually put that money back in, and that takes off the pressure, because obviously developing in Zanzibar is also not that easy.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. I mean, we are seeing that opportunity within the luxury segment. There are certain developers who are currently considering having a hotel component and a brand resi component for sale. It all depends on the regulatory, authority and how seamless it can be overall. We are exploring certain opportunities, but we just have to wait and see how they pan out.
Yeah, from our side as well, we're exploring a couple of opportunities. Obviously, as Jugal mentioned, the legal framework is something we're finding some inconsistencies in. From a Wyndham perspective, there's definitely an appeal for buyers with leisure, with lifestyle and investment in these condo hotels or branded residences. On the regulatory comment, obviously the necessity for an escrow account, for example, that's one thing that we're finding some grey areas in. So there's definitely big opportunities, but we're looking at it quite closer. Yeah.
We move over a little bit to like private islands or smaller islands that, Bobby, at Zanzibar I've offered these out, have given most of the islands out, and some of them they're threatening to take back in terms of if you're not developing. Are we seeing these islands having the potential of the better linkages with the bush and the beach because of the exclusivity? I mean, you touched on the fact of Tunda with Jumeirah in terms of that's probably one of the most successful private islands so far. It's probably well positioned because you can actually fly there directly from Tanzania, and it's actually classified as Tanzania, whereas some of the other private islands are classified as Zanzibar with their own challenges in terms of doing airstrips and things like that. So is this, just how do you think this space is going to pan out, and is there huge potential in it in terms of also from a brand's perspective to look at those kind of products that would be better suited to link with very high-end, small boutique exclusive lodges in the Serengeti and the Mara?
Yeah, the whole question of private islands has become something of the proverbial hot potato in Zanzibar, particularly of late. It was just post-COVID, and it was very much under the radar because nobody was thinking really about tourism and investment and things like that in those days. But sort of, I think it was late 21, the government under the new investment minister decided to release a slew. There was about 24 islands that were put up for investment by the government. It was not very well handled, to be honest. At the time, there was a lot of questions over the whole bidding process and things. And then, because it wasn't really that well publicized, it bypassed a lot of the main investors and brands. And so it went to a lot of local businessmen, well-positioned people with the intent, because they'd seen what had happened in Thanda. And then, of course, there's Mnemba Island, which is one of the most famous private islands in the Indian Ocean, if not the world, and which has just recently refurbed, having renewed their lease. So there was this situation where everybody was interested, but they didn't really know what to do. I mean, we advised on, I think, 5 islands in one form or another to various investors who'd been given the islands but weren't familiar with the requirements, because of course it's got to be off-grid, which is not easy. I have a safari background, so we knew about these things, but trying to bridge the gap between the actual requirements of developing a private island to the standard required in order to take care of all of the surrounding ecostructure and environments was a main challenge. And so as a result, the government realized about 6 months ago that a lot of them weren't being developed. And since then, a lot of interest had come to them about these private islands. And so the government announced that they were doing a review, which I think they did the first week of last month, just after Ramadan had finished. And there is talk that a lot of these islands are going back out, but we don't know. It's not being publicly kind of released or anything, because we know that the brands are now showing an interest in what's going on now.
Okay, great. I think I've been waved at quite a few times, so I've been told that we're actually out of time. So I'd just like to thank my panel members, and thanks for the robust discussion.